Hi, this is Eldon Christensen from the High Availability and Storage team. In this video, I'm going to be describing the new VM load balancing feature, which is in box in Windows Server 2016. What VM load balancing is that it will go and analyze the CPU and memory utilization across the nodes within a failover cluster. It will then go and live migrate virtual machines across the different nodes to balance out the nodes in the cluster. There may be scenarios such as you reboot a node for maintenance or it has a failure, it comes back into the cluster, but it won't be running any VMs by default. So the burden's really on you as an administrator today to go and then move the VMs around to ensure that all of the nodes are being utilized to host virtual machines. VM load balancing is going to handle all of this automatically for you in Windows Server 2016, and it's enabled by default. So let's walk through a scenario. All right, so let's take a simple two-node cluster. I've got one node which is up and running in the cluster, and I've got one node which is offline. Let's say, for example, I brought it down to do some patch maintenance on it. When that node went down, all the VMs live migrated over and are all running on node 1. In this scenario, I've got 4 VMs which are running on node 1, and node 2 is offline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to join node 2 back into the cluster. Now, when we join a node in, one of the things we do is that we wait 1 minute. So when a node comes in, we'll say, okay, let's wait a minute to see if there's any other nodes which are going to join the cluster, and let's give it a minute, and then before we go and load balance things within the cluster. So after it waits a minute, what's going to happen is it's going to analyze, and it's going to look at the CPU and memory utilization. So it's going to look at the nodes. It's going to say, hey, what is the current memory pressure on the node? It's also going to look at the CPU pressure, and it's going to take an average of the last 5 minutes of CPU, and it will average that out and say, okay, has the CPU been on average over the last 5 minutes over 80%? If either of those are true, if either the node is over 80% memory utilization or over 80% CPU utilization, then we'll say, hey, we need to balance out this node and move some VMs to another node. So what we'll do then is we will go and do a live migration to automatically move with no downtime and move a VM from host 1 to host 2 to help balance out the cluster. So let's see this in action. So here I've got node 2, which is down, and I'm just going to go ahead and start the cluster service on this node. You'll see that node 2 is now joining, and we'll come in and join the cluster. It's now up, and I now have 2 nodes. If I look at my virtual machines hosted, you can see they're all running on node 1. So I got 4 VMs all running on node 1. Now I've done a little time lapse here just to save us this little 1 minute wait to see if there's any other nodes. But you can see here what happens is that it will then analyze all the nodes. It'll see that I've got an unbalanced cluster, and it's going to go and move one of those virtual machines, which was running on node 1, over to node 2. So now I have 3 VMs running on node 1 and 1 running on node 2. Now, the next question you're probably saying is, hey, why didn't I move all the VMs? Or why didn't I move 2 of the VMs? Why did only 1 of 4 move? So what we do with VM load balancing is that we kind of take a sandpapering effect, is that what we want to do is we're going to go and very slowly sandpaper the cluster over time and balance it over time. So opposed to making big decisions and big bulk moves, is every 30 minutes we're going to go and analyze the cluster, and we're going to go, okay, let's go move a VM. Now we're going to wait another 30 minutes, and now let's go move another one, and let's wait another 30 minutes. And so while you're at home sleeping, not even thinking about it, your private cloud is self-analyzing itself and automatically adjusting itself to be optimized. And so we're just going to take this nice sandpapering effect every 30 minutes. So the analyzer is going to wait 30 minutes. And then what it's going to do is it's going to go, okay, I could actually do better here. So I've got 3 VMs running on node 1. It'd be better if I balance it out and I go and move one of those VMs over to node 2. So now I have the cluster balanced. So let me just show you kind of that in action. Again, I've just time-lapsed this here to save us 30 minutes of waiting on this demo, but you can see here that after 30 minutes, don't do anything. Cluster's just sitting here. I haven't even touched the mouse. And now I've got 2 VMs running on node 1, and I've got 2 VMs running on node 2. And the cluster is balanced. So it did it all automatically. And again, this is enabled by default in Windows Server 2016. So let me show you some of the configuration options associated with this. So if you go to the properties of the cluster, you'll see this new balancer tab, and you'll see for aggressiveness, let's talk about the aggressiveness and the configuration options. The first default setting is that the default's going to be at 80% utilization, either memory or CPU. If it gets over 80%, we're going to consider that threshold to move things. If you want to be a little more aggressive with that, you could say, okay, let's set the medium, which is 70%. So now if it gets over 70% CPU or memory, we're going to move it. But that's still really aggressive if you get over 70 or 80%. What you probably want, and probably the most interesting, is the high aggressiveness, which is averaging. So it's actually going to go look at all the different nodes. It's going to average the CPU, average the memory, and then if any of the nodes are off average, it's going to go move them. So nodes don't have to be really heavily balanced, they just have to be off average. You can also control when we do the balancing. So you can say balance a node join every 30 minutes, which is what I demoed earlier. You can also say, hey, I only want to balance on node join, only when a new node comes in, I know it's not doing anything, but don't move things otherwise. And then, of course, you can disable it. So if you want the Windows Server 2012 R2 experience where you're saying, hey, I don't want you moving VMs around on me ever, I'm going to decide where I want things running and when. You can obviously just turn this off and disable it. If you're using the System Center Virtual Machine Manager dynamic optimization feature, it will also go and disable this automatically if you want to be using System Center with its load balancing capabilities. But again, this is something we wanted to include in Box and Windows Server. We consider this part of the core fundamentals to keep your private cloud balanced for you and making sure that we distribute workload. So I hope you enjoyed this video.